The thing is, to really listen and know a person is to do much more than close your mouth, hear them out, and repeat what they've said. Welcome to NVC Life. I'm Rachelle Lamb, veteran NVC trainer and relationship coach, helping listeners navigate interpersonal conflict and ground more deeply into relational living. Greetings, fellow humans. Well, we're 9 days into 2024, and I've been thinking, what would be helpful to talk about at this time? I've come up with this. It seems to me that the skill of listening is something we can always work on. And the reason is we're human, we're vulnerable, we're opinionated, and we're emotional. What a package. And despite all the personal development training available to us and the billions of dollars spent on the industry, even the most skillful of us will get triggered. Let me just throw in here that according to market analysis reports, the global personal development market size was estimated at $43.77 US billion in 2022 and is anticipated to grow at a compound annual growth rate of 5.5% from 2023 to 2030. Are we better people, I wonder? Are we better listeners? It's not like this episode will turn anyone into a better listener, but that doesn't stop me from wanting to explore the subject. A refresher on listening is never a waste of time, in my opinion. Here's a little questionnaire for you. Think of someone you know who is kind, someone you know personally or a public figure. Now, think of someone you know who is mean. Now think of someone you know who is funny. Finally, think of someone you know who is stingy. Now, if you're like most people, the standard of measurement that you used to identify these people is based on your own standards and not on the standards of the persons you identified as kind, mean, funny, or stingy. So the old saying that how we judge others says more about ourselves than it says about us is fairly accurate. And this, in and of itself, isn't a problem, except when it's a problem. And it's mostly a problem in close and intimate relationships, like when someone is hurt or upset with their partner's words, actions, or behaviors, and expresses it. It's so hard to listen well in those moments. The skills we've acquired and practiced in the workshop setting can so easily go straight out the window. Empathic listening? Who gives a shit? We turn into 7-year-olds and become defensive or attacking or both. We might also shut down, completely disengage, or sulk. We each have our repertoire of well-practiced coping responses. But this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where it's important to see how you're in reactive autopilot mode and apply some of the interventions you've hopefully learned from a personal development book or workshop. Your amygdala is firing, your reasoning mind has gone offline, and yet the person in front of you, who you perceive as a threat, is someone you love. The thing is, to really listen and know a person is to do much more than close your mouth, hear them out, and repeat what they've said. This can be done without lowering one's defenses. That's not the kind of listening I'm talking about. Real listening is much deeper, much more generous, and also much, much harder. It requires a kind of letting go or submission to something greater than our own defended territory so that we can soften and become curious. It's next to impossible to be defended and curious, or certain about being right and curious. Curiosity is something we have to cultivate, and it's counterintuitive. Who wants to be curious when they're armored and angry? Here's a scenario for you. You voice your frustration to your partner for not emptying the dishwasher and making a move towards preparing dinner. They've been home all day. Meanwhile, you've come home exhausted to find your partner laying comfortably on the couch, scrolling through social media posts. Ugh! You were exhausted before you walked through the front door, but now you're irritated. Your partner says, "Hi, hun, how was your day?" You say, "Incredibly draining," as you feel yourself beginning to dread the evening. You put down your satchel, remove your shoes and jacket, and head to the kitchen. It looks pretty much like it did this morning when you left. You pour yourself a glass of water, drink it down, then open the dishwasher to place your glass on the rack, and there it is, still full of dishes to be removed, just as it was this morning. Oh my God, I hate this. Why do I feel like everything is my responsibility? Like I'm always the one to initiate action. Like if it's going to happen, I'm the one who has to take charge. You probably don't say it out loud, but you're seething inside. Can you relate to this? Then you head to the bedroom to get out of your work clothes and into something more comfortable. Okay, so now you say it. Hey, I don't mean to be critical, but how is it that you don't even think to empty the dishwasher and get started on dinner? I've just come home after a long, hard day. Are you expecting me to do it? Come on. What does deep listening sound like in a moment like this? Let me suggest what it's not. It's not, "Hey, I was just going to do it." It's not, "You're not the only one who works around here." It's not, "So you think I'm a lazy good-for-nothing?" It's not, "You could be a lot nicer to me, you know." It's not, "But what about last week when I cleaned the entire place?" And it's not, "You didn't even notice the flowers I got you, did you?" If you really want to listen, it requires, first of all, not taking it personally. That's hard. The impulse is to want to defend ourselves from being the incompetent slob that we imagine we're being accused of being. Deep listening, however, asks us to listen to what the speaker is saying and not to what we're telling ourselves in response to what they're saying. And boy, is that ever hard when we fall into our reactive patterns. This is where letting go comes in. Notice your breath, how it's probably becoming shallow, how your heartbeat has quickened, how it's hard to think straight. Pay attention to your body. Pay attention. Take a long, deep inhale, followed by a long, deep exhale. Conscious breathing will help you regulate your emotions. Maybe slowly rub your legs or arms with your hands. Soothe yourself. Keep breathing. What is your partner saying? You're not being asked to agree with them. You're not being asked to say, "Yep, I'm a piece of crap because I didn't empty the dishwasher and get started on dinner." That's not what you're being asked. You're being asked to recognize their humanness. Your partner is telling you that they want to have a sense that you know them and understand them, that you might have anticipated their fatigue and taken steps to make life a little easier for them. They want you to know that they feel alone and don't want to be plagued by the belief that the daily burdens are primarily theirs to carry. They, too, want to be able to lay back and relax. So how might you respond then? How about something like, "I hear your disappointment at coming home to find the place looking pretty much like it did when you left. I can see how you would feel alone and frustrated, feeling that things only get done when you do them. I'm sorry I didn't take initiative. How about you rest on the couch while I get to work in the kitchen? And how about a hug?" A response like this is very likely to ease the tension and reestablish a positive rapport between you. And when you think about it, it hasn't cost you anything, by which I mean it hasn't cost you your self-esteem. Unless, of course, you've somehow fallen for the narrative which was running in your own head that you were a good for nothing. If in fact we have been inattentive or overly absorbed in our own world, the best way to correct is to become attentive to what needs to be done. There's nothing redemptive about copping to the idea that we're worthless. That's a lose-lose proposition that keeps everyone miserable. American writer and civil rights activist James Baldwin wrote, "Nothing is more desirable than to be released from an affliction, but nothing is more frightening than to be divested of a crutch." Our self-condemning narratives can become the very crutch that locks us into stagnation. I'm no good. I'm never enough. I'm a failure. I can't do anything right. Relationships aren't for me. I'm unlovable, etc., etc. Scripts like this are ways that we opt out of the work of becoming more fully who we are. A lot of conflict avoidance is in fact the unwillingness to look at ourselves and see how we contribute to the stagnation or rupture of relationships. So not only do we need to become better listeners to others, we also need to become better listeners to ourselves. What am I telling myself, either about you or about me, that locks me into a confined version of myself? How do I keep myself bound to a crutch, meaning the compromising story of myself, and then turn around and accuse you for the fact that I won't let it go? So we have much to learn about listening to others and ourselves. If you are one of my regular listeners, you know that I appreciate poetry. I especially appreciate how poetry can draw us out from our habituated ways of seeing and thinking, and how it introduces us to parts of ourselves that might not otherwise be known. Poetry is beautifully transgressive and gives us a chance to be perfectly awestruck and bewildered in the face of mystery. A mystery that is as vast as life itself and also includes the mystery of who we are to ourselves and to each other. To close, here is one of my favorite passages from author and poet Mark Nepo from his book, The Exquisite Risk, Daring to Live an Authentic Life. Sooner or later, if we want to feel what it is to be alive in a universe that is alive, we will have to empty ourselves, open our hearts, and listen. This emptying and opening and listening is the practice that allows us to hear that voice of God, whatever name you give to it, that resides in each of us. By listening with all of who we are briefly illuminated like stained glass, letting everything move through us in those privileged and enlightened moments. But how do we listen? It is so simple and so hard, so obvious to begin and so elusive to maintain. In this lies the vitality of deep listening, to keep beginning over and over, to keep emptying and opening, and simply to keep listening. For to listen is to continually give up all expectation and to give our attention completely and freshly to what is before us, not really knowing what we will hear or what that will mean. In the practice of our days, to listen is to lean in softly with a willingness to be changed by what we hear. I especially love that last line. In the practice of our days, to listen is to lean in softly with a willingness to be changed by what we hear. I leave you with that, my friends, and thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning into NVC Life. For future episodes, be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube. For free resources or to book a private session with me, head over to RachelleLamb.com. Until the next time, stay sane, grateful, and generous.